Good morning, everybody. A good Erev Shabbat to you. It's Rabbi Chaitzevsky here from my home just up the block from our beloved Shul. This week we begin the Torah portion, the Torah book, I should say, of Bamidbar, in the desert. That's the official name of the book, although maybe with more of a concern for demographics, the book is called, in English, Numbers, because of the census that is taken at the beginning of the book. A threefold census, a census of the Israelites, a census of the Levites, a census of the firstborn, whose position was going to be taken over by the Levites and the Kohanim. Very interesting kind of book, but I like Bamidbar. I like to look at it as in the desert. I've often said that current events and experiences shape the way we look at the Torah and gives us an opportunity to look at the Torah with fresh eyes. And I think it's safe to say that still going through the coronavirus isolation and safer at home, I think that we can relate to the book of Bamidbar in ways perhaps we couldn't before. We are Bamidbar. We are in the desert. We are struggling to maintain a sense of community, and we're doing okay with it, to be honest with you, from what I see, but I know that it's still difficult and unsettling. You know, the Torah portion is always engineered to be read on the Shabbat immediately preceding Shavuot. And I think there are many good reasons for that. And in light of what we're going through, separated from our shul and in many cases from one another, I just want to share a couple of thoughts about this particular Shabbat, its relationship to us, its relationship to Shavuot. For me, what jumps out in the Torah portion is the way that the Jewish people had organized themselves for what was going to be the next 40 years in the desert. They were organized in proximity to the Mishkan, that first portable tent sanctuary, tent synagogue, the synagogue without a roof, the synagogue whose roof really was the Shekhinah, the cloud of God's glory that descended and protected things going on inside. That was the roof of the Mishkan. And the Israelite camps, 12 tribes, arrayed 3 tribes on each of the 4 sides, north, south, east, and west. And of course, the Levites, whose job was going to be caretaking of the things in the Mishkan, and later on singing in what became the temple, they were given a position also on all 4 sides, but in proximity to the Mishkan itself, in between the encampment of the Israelites on all 4 sides and the Mishkan itself were the Levites. And this was going to be their arrangement for their entire travelogue that we read about in the book of Bamidbar. Why was that so important? Why did the Torah spend so much time on that in the opening parsha, which gives its name to the book, Bamidbar? And I think it's because the purpose of the Mishkan was to keep alive the formative experience of standing at Sinai. Standing at Sinai was great drama. Standing at Sinai was great theater, but it was so much more than that. God pierced the corporate veil, so to speak. God showed up for a meeting with us, and we were all there. The Torah says each of us was actually standing there. And that event, with all the drama and with all the theater and with the magnificence of God revealing God's very self to us by speaking to us in intelligible words didn't end up being enough. The Jewish people sinned colossally with something we know as the golden calf. The Mishkan, the command to build a Mishkan, is seen as the corrective to that. It's seen by both the Ramban and other Torah commentators as, at least in part, to keep the experience of Sinai, the closeness that we felt to God, and the nearness of God, to keep that experience alive. So the Jewish people arrayed themselves in proximity to the Mishkan. The Mishkan was at the center of their existence, as Mount Sinai and the experience of revelation was supposed to be the center of their existence. We are Bamidbar. We do not have access to our synagogue right now. We cannot array ourselves in proximity to the synagogue. We are not having minyanim at the synagogue. We're not having Shavuot services at the synagogue. We don't know when we're going to be in our building. We are working towards that, but we just don't know. But the Torah portion of Bamidbar has another layer. And it's another layer that gives me hope that over the next few weeks and the next few months, we're going to be able to take advantage and grow from our experience in this midbar, in this desert in which we find ourselves. The fact is, the book of Bamidbar is really a book about transition. It's a book that had the Israelites moving from Egypt and the event of Sinai in the Sinai desert. And by the end of the book, they are at the borders of Israel. The desert was a transitional piece of land. The journey through the desert was a transitional journey. Many of the formative experiences and formative ideas were going to be put into play in the desert so that they could really play out in magnificent ways once the Israelites would be in the promised land. But Bamidbar is a very important place. It is not a place to be dour or to be anxious or to be fearful. In the Torah's perspective, the desert is a place of great potential. The desert is a place where growth is possible against all odds, where positivity is possible, even when every arrow seems to be pointed in the negative direction. The experience of our people at Mount Sinai was a glorious one. We are going to relive that experience next week on Thursday night, Friday, and Shabbat as we celebrate Shavuot. The experience of our people in the desert, even with all the ups and downs that are described in the Torah portion and in the entire book of Bamidbar, are really a positive portrait of our growth and our becoming ready to enter the promised land. Well, for us, the promised land might be reforging and reliving our connection to our own community and our own synagogue. And we are working so hard to make that happen. Let's use these weeks that we are still going to be away from our synagogue. Let's see them as the Bamidbar that the Israelites traveled through thousands of years ago. Let's try to make the most of this time. Let's try to grow, and let's try to remain positive. And if you're not positive now, let's try to develop the positivity Let's not wait for that moment when we're going to be told, come to the shul. Let's build up to that moment now. There is much work that needs to be done by each of us. We need to get ready to receive Torah, and we need to be ready to take that Torah and travel with it, even Bamidbar, even in the desert. Let's make it the most wonderful and positive experience that we can. We miss you, we love you, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. Stay safe and have a wonderful Shabbat.